Paul Muldoon joins us today. Paul, very welcome, or should I say on CQN Mouldy 67, because for the best part of 19 years, that's how you've been known there.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for having us on, Paul.
So, for those who don't know, you were quite instrumental. You're a cyclist, and you're quite instrumental in 2017 in the Cycle to Lisbon to commemorate the 50th anniversary of something that happened in Lisbon way back then. And you were also quite instrumental in organising the Cycle to Seville in May this year to commemorate something that happened 20 years prior to that in Seville. Can you want to maybe just tell us a wee bit about how you decided and why you decided to organise the Cycle to Seville the Cycle to Lisbon and what happened there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the story for Lisbon goes back about 5 years prior to that. It goes back it goes back to 2009, where I sort of got back on my bike. I'd been, as a kid, I always had bikes, whether it be racing bikes, BMXs, whatever. Really, that was my thing when I was a kid, doing paper rounds on the bikes. And then as you get a little bit older, following Celtic, going out at the weekend, that type of stuff, some of your leisure activities are not quite the same. So I found that I'd stopped going out using my bike for a number of years, and I landed on 20th of June 2009 actually, and I'd been sitting reading CQN, and myself and a couple of the guys were having a bit of banter about what we could do to try and help Martin Kane, who was a fellow CQNer and found himself in a pretty horrific situation where he took we went to bed one night at 11 o'clock and he woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning with Devic syndrome. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's probably the equivalent of MS by about 1,000 times worse. So in 2009, myself and another CQNer, Moonbeam's Wet Dream, the two of us sort of got together and organised a small cycle. And this was coming from a guy like myself who hadn't been on a bike for probably about 15 or 20 years. So we organised this cycle through to Edinburgh to raise money for Martin Kane. And for me, that was really the start of getting in and doing a bit of cycling and starting to actively be involved in fundraising. And that was in 2009. And through CQN, there was always a campaign, there was always something happening whereby it was catching our attention to help other people. And I think that's very much at the heart of what we do in CQN and really at the heart of Celtic Football Club. So that's really where it all started. From that, we had then with a number of ideas around what other things we could do. And we found ourselves in a situation. I was getting into one of these pre-season friendlies at Celtic Park in the July, and it must have been July 2012. And one of the guys, Mark Martin, had spoke to me and he says, "Paul, have you been reading the blog and are you aware of Noxie Seven's wee boy?" And I went, "Yeah, I've seen that." So we started chatting and he said, "Look, is there anything you could do?" And I says, "Well, we could probably do another cycle through to Edinburgh, because the Glasgow to Edinburgh cycle is only in a couple of weeks' time," and that was in the September 2012. So that was fine. So he says, "Do you want to organise that?" And I says, "Right, I'll organise that. See if a couple of people want to do the cycle and we'll get things off and running." So at that point in time, we were a little bit fragmented. Mark mentioned it to me, had the idea, go and do the cycle. And then in the coming weeks, sort of Mark started to pull in some of the other guys like Tommy, like Brendan, like Danny. And before we know it, there was sort of 10 of us all kind of pulling together to try and create something to help with Oscar. So around that time, sort of Danny and myself started kicking ideas about it and says, "Right, we'll organise this cycle to Belfast." And it was mainly on the back of the people that we knew in CQN. And at the time, we started putting these messages out. And before we knew it, we had 5 cycles from Scotland, from Leeds, and from different parts on Ireland, all wanted to send on to Belfast. And the idea was we would do that on the weekend, the St Patrick's weekend in 2013. So here we are, we're off and running. and we're about to have this other cycle. And between myself and Danny, we were doing recruitment, booking hotels, booking boats, and all that type of stuff. And then just out of the blue, around late 2012, Celtic were playing in the Champions League, and we were drawn against Barcelona. And a couple of days before we were heading out to play Barcelona, I got a message from a friend of yours and a friend of mine, a guy called Mark Cameron, and he said to me that he'd been speaking with yourself, Paul, and that he's trying to organise a cycle from Brother Wilfred's home place in Ballymote in Sligo to Celtic Park. And it was indicated that I might be a cyclist that might be keen in taking part. So that was fine. So spoke to Mark and said, yeah, I'm up for that. I'll do this. I'll do the cycle from Ballymote to Celtic Park. Now, I think it's all about perspective. At this point in time, I'd only ever cycled the equivalent of 1 day cycle. I'd only cycled one Glasgow to Edinburgh in 2009 and a Glasgow to Edinburgh in 2012. And over and above that, I'd been out on the bike with a few friends and stuff doing cycling, but I'd never done a multi-day event. So at the time, I says, right, okay, I'm up for it. It was a 4-day cycle, Ballymote and Sligo to Celtic Park to raise money for the Celtic Foundation. Not only to raise money for the Celtic Foundation, but to promote the awareness of the 125 for 125 campaign. So that was really the start of it. And so I then found myself, I don't do things in short quantities, flung myself into suddenly having to train for a 4-day event. So we do that. We fast forward a little bit. We play Barcelona at home, Celtic Park. We beat them at Celtic Park in the Champions League. I'm standing at the top of the stairs as Barcelona scored in the dying minutes of the game, and I'm running down the stairs. And the whole thing here was we had to get over to the velodrome, because that's where the team bus was parked. So we'd hired one of these pickup truck type things. We've got the bikes on the back, the suitcases on the back, and between my dad and Mark Cameron, they were the support drivers to get us to Ireland. So quite a surreal moment. You beat Barcelona, and suddenly your attention changes to, hold on, we need to run, we need to beat the crowd, we need to get on this the team bus here, and we need to get to Cairnryan, and we need to try and beat some of those supporters buses down the road. So that was very much the start of the Ballymote cycle, if you like, and 4 days, quite amazing, meeting 5 other guys.
Bob, can I just interrupt you slightly? We're losing the bottom half of your face there. That's better. You're a very handsome man, so let's see it.
So yeah,
sorry, on you go.
So that was very much the start of the escalating it, lifting things up and making things a bit bigger. We did the Ballymote cycle from Brother Wilfred's home place to Celtic Park. 4 days cycle. We raised approximately about £9,000-10,000 in doing that cycle. And I think coming away from that, the experience of doing that with the other 5 guys over the 4 days, the whole thing, that it wasn't just a wee holiday, it wasn't just a wee cycle. There was something coming out of it. We were raising awareness for the 125 for 125 campaign, and at that time, the whole thing about that campaign was we didn't need people to go and do 243-mile cycles. It was all about saying, well, if somebody can organise a little coffee morning in the work or in their social club, and that raises £1.25, that raises £1.25, and it was really just about trying to raise awareness for what the foundation was doing then. And that was really my first experience of the foundation, and what it tries to do in terms of the fundraising aspect of it. So to come back to your question, I've probably given you the 5 DVD box set answer. I was sitting at home in November 2012 after having achieved a 4-day cycle with the other 5 guys, plus my dad is a support driver of the bus. And I was sitting at home and thinking, what else could we do? And I remember sitting there, and I was sending I was sending the other 5 cyclists, including my dad, emails saying we could maybe try this, we could maybe try that, and there was one of the ideas at the time was, what if we cycled from Lisbon to Celtic Park, right? And I remember sending that email, and I remember getting some of the responses from the guys, and some of the responses were, great idea, but Paul, little bit of advice for you. What we probably need you to do is take stock of where you are now and see if you can do a bigger cycle, more than the 243 miles, let's say Glasgow to London or London to Glasgow. Try and break it up, and then by all means go and look at a cycle from Lisbon to Glasgow. And that was in November 2012. And I took on board some of the comments that the guys had made about maybe make a bigger cycle first. So that was fine. And I think life's all about, these things are all about perspective. The biggest cycle I had ever achieved at that point in time on any given day was 82 miles, and that was when we were cycling from one of the border towns to Lurgan, and that was 82 miles on the Friday. So I'd never really got to the 100 miles, and I sort of taking on board what the guys were saying. I thought, well, Paul, you need to cycle 100 miles first, and then you need to learn and do that like maybe 3, 4, 5 days in a row. And then if you can do that, then by all means look at cycling from Lisbon to Glasgow. So that was we draw a line under the Ballymote cycle, and then we start to look out trying to build ourselves up and doing more cycles and stuff like that. So essentially that's what's happened is in the March 2013, we had the Oscar Knox cycle from Celtic Park to Belfast. We did that over 2 days, and we had other cycles going from Leeds and different parts of Ireland, and that was quite an exciting. It was intense and it was exciting, but it was also a sad time as well. Back then, there was a lot of focus in trying to raise £500,000 for Oscar's treatment in the US, and we were under a bit of pressure time-wise. So the whole coming together of people and getting people involved that with the different skills for organising cycles or even just running campaigns, that then started to manifest itself with the Oscar Knox cycle, whereby we organised that cycle to go to Belfast. We got lots of people involved, we got lots of focus, and from that we had a small group, and it was called We Oscar for Life, and that whole campaign, including the cycle, raised £140,000 to help go towards Oscar's treatment. And then I can recall some of the nights we had at Celtic Park and some of the race nights, and just seeing all the people that you'd never ever met before that had been on CQN, but they all came together for this common cause to raise funds for a 4-year-old kid, and it was quite incredible actually. So we obviously had the cycle to Belfast, and we kept in touch with Stephen and his wife Leona over that time, and then from the rest of that year on, we sort of looked at it and said, right, we've annoyed the life out of everyone we've ever known, right? Whether it be family, friends, people on CQM, we've annoyed the life of all these people, and pulled the Oscar Knox campaign together, so to speak. So at that point in time, I was probably looking at it and thinking, we did the cycle in 2012 and through to Edinburgh in September. We then head over to Ballymote in November, and probably the coldest weather of the year. And then in March, we do the Oscar Knox campaign. And at that point in time, I'm thinking, I've annoyed the life out of people since September, November, March. I need to give this a rest. So that's very much where the idea about the cycle to Lisbon started. But the takeaway from it was, we kind of need to build ourselves up here and find a way of being able to do 500 miles before I can do 1,500 miles, for example. And what then happened, Paul, was in the job that I do, I work. I can be working away a lot and stuff like that. And I was working away in the US at the time, and I got a call at some crazy time in the morning, and I never answered it because I was sleeping. But later on this morning, I got this call, and it was the people that we built up a relationship with at neuroblastoma, which are now known as Solving Kids Cancer. And they'd phoned me up, and this was in April. This would have been in April 2014. And the folks there are lovely, right? But they phoned me up this particular day, and they said to me, asked me how we're getting on and stuff. And they said, look, do you fancy doing a cycle for us? And my immediate response was, not another cycle, not another charity campaign. He says, why? And I says, well, we've just annoyed the life out of people in 3 campaigns there, September, November, March. We need to give this a break. And they said, well, you keep in touch with Stephen and Leona? And I says, yes. And they said, well, look, we know Oscar's not keeping too well. And they said, we want to do something. We want to organise a cycle from London to Edinburgh to Glasgow to Belfast. And I went, okay. And the Belfast part's really for Oscar. So they said, what do you want me to do? And because this is still quite early in the morning, and in time zone, I said, we want you to take part in it. We want you to be a Santa. I says, what do you mean a Santa? I says, well, we want you to dress up like a Santa or wear red clothes and be a Santa and be a cycling Santa. I said, we did it last year with 2 guys that did it last year, but we'd like you to take part because of the connection with Oscar. And we'd like to try and promote it and stuff like that. I said, right, okay, let's do that. So a couple of weeks later, sadly, Oscar passed away. And then the whole idea of the cycle started to become more real. So we fast forward a few months. By this time, I was working in the US for a few months at a time. And I'd been out there cycling. I took my bike out so I could train when I was out in the US. So I then come back at the beginning of December, and I've got to go and do this. I've been out in Arizona where you've got 100-degree heat every day, and suddenly I'm coming back to Scotland, and I'm doing this cycle from London in the coldest time of the year. So we do the cycling Santas, and the cycling Santas, it was actually really quite clever how it was designed. You cycle from London, from the Children's Hospital in London, you cycle to Oxford, and you meet a family that's a neuroblastoma family, and then from there you then dot yourself up and down the country via all the hospitals in Birmingham, Manchester, Edinburgh, York Hill, for example. So we did that, and as a result, I'm starting to think, well, hold on, there was quite a lot of miles involved in that. We might do this big cycle at some point in time, and that was very much late 2014. 2015 kept the cycling going, and it was just before a Champions League, sorry, not a Champions League game, it was before one of the Europa League games. I'm standing outside Brother Walford's statue at Celtic Park, and one of my friends from Tyneside, David Sheeran, came across, and we'd just been chatting and stuff, and he says to me, I'd really love to do another one of those crazy cycles like you organised before. And I said, what do you have in mind? And he says, I want to cycle round all the grounds that Celtic played in 1967. And I said, okay, that's an idea. And I said, I've got an idea that's similar to that, which is to cycle from Lisbon to Celtic Park. I said, leave it with me. So a couple of days later, I'm playing with a spreadsheet, and I'm starting to get all these miles on the computer of how would you get to all these grounds and stuff like that. And before we know it, it was something like 4,500 miles or so, right? And I said to David, we could do that. Not really thinking the practicalities of it. And I remember going in to see this HR business partner that I was working with at this client at the time. And I said, well, I know I can take holidays off and stuff like that, but do you reckon if I didn't take holidays in 2014 or whatever, I could save some of these up? Sorry, if I don't take holidays in 2015, I could save them up for 2016, and then in 2017, from the 50th anniversary, we could do this. And the guy says to me, he says, Paul, you want to take 7 weeks off? And I went, yeah. And he says, are you serious? And I went, yeah. He said, look, just leave me alone just now. There's a lot of things happening in the business. Give me peace, right? So I says, right, leave it alone. So unknown to me, the business that I was doing a bit of work for was having to reduce its capacity and stuff, and that's what was going on at the time. And a couple of weeks later, when I was working away, I found out that the business was going to shrink itself. So it started to become a bit more real that, you know, me asking for 6 and 7 weeks off to cycle all around Europe wasn't really practical. But I managed to get back to David beginning of October, and I said, look.
Well, we're losing your face again a wee bit,
Okay.
sorry.
So I managed to get back to David at the beginning of October. I said, I don't think this 4,500 mile thing's going to work. And we kicked a few ideas about. And the idea we come up with was, well, why don't we cycle from Celtic Park to Lisbon and do it that way? And that's where we sort of landed on. And I say this to David all the time. I says, you were the first victim. I says, I only needed one other person to be crazy to say, we'll do it. And we'll do it. And I remember speaking to my dad and saying to my dad, look, if we get no one else to do it, will you drive us there? Will you be the support guy? Didn't know what he was letting me sell in for, but he says, yeah, we'll do it. So at that point in time, October 2015, the Lisbon idea was born. And no matter how we did it, we were going to do it. And I remember sending text messages out to lots of people that I'd came across in the previous years and saying, we're doing this cycle. More than welcome to join us, but in order to train for it, I'm going to do Land's End John O'Groats next year, which is about 1,000 to 1,100 miles. I didn't really know it at the time, but I'm booking that up. I'm going to do it. If anyone wants to come along, we'll do it that way. So essentially, that's what we did. We took stock of what I was told in 2012 about build it up, and we planned a Land's End John O'Groats in the 2016, and then from that, we said, right, we're going to do Lisbon. We didn't know how we were going to do it, but we were going to do it. And so that's really where the Lisbon idea was born. It was born in 2012, and we eventually found the means of stretching myself physically to do it. And by organising the Oscar cycle and a few other smaller cycles, we found the means in terms of how to recruit people.
Well, it's a great story, and there's so many wee elements in it. For a start, this is one of the things that happen when you hang about with Celtic fans, and you know you waiting parts of yourself that didn't exist before, and then they make calls on you of, well, what matters in life, you know, what matters to community or yourself, or to even want to be a Celtic fan, and you end up doing things. What you've done is extraordinary. It really is extraordinary. And I had no idea that basically you hadn't been on the bike for 15, 20 years before all this kicked off.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more incredible what you've done. But it's a testament to the Celtic community. It's a testament to the people on CQN who, you know, I remember well when Kano was, the news of Kano broke on the blog, and it was just one of us. It was one of our community. He was off his head, an absolute rocket. But you know, it was a much loved absolute rocket for us, and it spoke about us. And then Mark Martin, who you mentioned there, and Pablo, I remember in the early days, God rest him, stepped forward and says, you know, we need to actually do something about this guy. And lots of us wouldn't have thought about it, and the people that did think, you know, we need to do something, they taught me something, and they taught you something. And, you know, then before you know it, people like you are out there teaching others, and you know, just giving that example about what it is to be part of this community, be part of the Celtic community, be part of, you know, a normal, caring human being. And as a consequence of that, it was a long time ago now, lots and lots of people have developed that side of themselves. And you know, I'm one of them, because I had a very underdeveloped side of myself before CQN came into my life, and you know, all of a sudden I'm meeting people who have an impression on me and make me think, you know, I have an obligation. In fact, when things go well for me, I have an obligation to go out there and make sure that I'm doing things for people that need a bit of help, because God knows when we will all need it, but one day we will all actually need somebody's help somewhere along the line. I'm just, you're so incredibly inspiring in what you've done, and even the experiences that been here. You go out, you do something, and you hit everybody, you hit everybody, and then the second time you hit out, and the third time you can't hit with the same effect, the same target. You need to give people a break. You need to find new targets, and you've come through all this learning and experience, and now you're a decade or so on, and you've got this knowledge about what's important to people, to life, how to go about raising funds, how to go about creating events, how to go about actually managing a community of contacts and people that will help achieve these things. So it's an absolute power of effort. You possibly don't know it, but you're a complete and utter power of effort. And I've got 18 questions here. I've only actually asked you one, so I hate to think about asking you about the cycle of Seville now at a time. But the cycle of Seville came along, and if you don't mind me just cutting across you here, you decided to organise the event for it. And you built a community, some of whom came with you in Lisbon, some of whom just watched what happened in Lisbon, thought, I can do that, I want to be part of it, and signed up for it, and some who were new to it. And then you had an accident, understand, and you were unable to do that. So can you just explain a wee bit about, after you got the Seville cycle on the map, basically, where you've been personally?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the story with the Seville cycle is that unlike the Lisbon cycle, where I was intensely involved in everything, right, and working late at night into the early hours of the morning, playing with spreadsheets, phoning people, contacting people, all sorts of stuff. That was very much the Lisbon cycle. It was very, very intense for a long period of time, from October 2015 till September 2017. It was 2 years. It was pretty intense. And but what then happened after that, Paul, was we very much I'd been sort of working away for a while, hadn't really been doing much cycling, and one of the guys, Alan McLaughlin, who keeps in touch with me all the time, says,
"Sorry, Paul, we're losing your face again."
He says, "I noticed you've not been out on your bike much. Do you fancy coming out for a cycle?" And I said, "Look, I'm going to make excuses here. I'm not the fittest." And he says, "Come on, get your backside out, come out cycling." And this was very much early 2019, and we were meeting a young French guy who was cycling from France to Celtic Park via all of the kind of Celtic nations, if you like. And he said, let's go and meet this young fella. So there was 4 or 5 of us went down, and we met him down at Ayr train station. And through the course of the cycle, Alan was saying, "Look, what are we going to do next?" He says, "What are we going to Milan, or what are we going to Seville," and stuff like that. So sometimes it just takes a conversation like that to catch the attention. And I said, "Well, I'm not doing any more of these cycles. They're crazy, not doing any more." And then obviously back on the bike that particular day, the whole excitement of getting back on the bike, doing a 40-mile cycle, helping this young French guy get to Celtic Park was just amazing. And we went down to the West Brewery after it, and we had some hydration for half an hour or so, and we're chatting, and we were saying, "Look, that whole idea about going to Milan, that's a really, really good idea." And coming away from that, I had a bit of time in my hands, because one of my contracts had sort of finished up, and a wee bit of time at home, and we started to get chatting. So before we know it, we've flung ourselves into organising a cycle to Milan, which was, let's just repeat what we've done before. Let's go and recruit as many of the Lisbon cyclists. Let's try and annoy the world on the internet, get another couple of cyclists. And that was very much from April 2019 all the way through until March 2020. And the Milan cycle, if you like, that included the core folk from Lisbon, and we recruited some new people to go to Milan. But obviously what then happened, Paul, was sort of COVID came along, and the advice from the foundation in the early days was something we really need to be careful here with in terms of insurance and everything else. And that was very early March. But then by the end of March, we had all realised what we were actually dealing with. So the COVID put the Milan cycle, the 50th anniversary of Milan, on hold. And what sort of then happened was some of the guys who had mentioned Seville cycle through different get-togethers, Alan and Mike, one of the guys who lives up in Aberdeen, they'd sort of tried to keep things going, even although with the COVID, when we were able to start getting folk back out together, for example, cycling and stuff, they then started to chat about it. So we had a situation. I wasn't directly involved at that time, but what was effectively happening is there was a few folk that were saying, right, we've been recruited to go to Milan. We don't have a Milan. What can we do next? And I remember Alan speaking to me on the morning at Celtic Park. We were playing Dundee United when Jota scored in the last minute. And I think Ross County were unlucky to draw from a team from Glasgow that particular day. And Alan met me that morning. He says, look, we're thinking of doing this Seville thing. And I thought, oh no, here we go again. But effectively what's happened was Alan said, well, look, you interested in doing this Seville thing? I says, I'm interested in doing it. Largely as a cyclist and less as an organizer, if you like. So we, over the sort of coming weeks, we agreed that I would have more of a hands-off approach and let other people come in that have the skills for marketing or social media, whatever, and let those folk very much come in and let them run it, if you like. And my role for the Seville cycle way back then was more taking a hands-off approach, meeting Alan every couple of weeks and just chatting to him about different things. So very much Alan really got the gang together and got them off and running for the Seville cycle. So that was really the idea. Cycle to Seville, celebrate that team that, if you think in 1994, we had the Celts for Change campaign and we nearly went under, right? And then you think about it, 9 years later, we're playing in the European final. You really could not make that up, right? So it was all, the concept was of two things. One, celebrate that team from 20 years ago, and let's raise money for the foundation. And Alan, Mike, and a few other guys got that off and running, with the core of being the Lisbon cyclist and the folks that we recruited to go to Milan, if you like. So that was the idea. I very much signed up as a cyclist, and unfortunately, Paul, I had a bit of a relapse. You touched on having an accident, yeah. I very much had a relapse where I've got back, neck, head, arm, muscular pain, and then I developed. What subsequently happened was I developed nerve pain that would be running down my neck and running down my arm and stuff. So it became a situation that previously, having been in the accident, having the back and neck issues, and going to the physio and getting treatment, 5 or 6 appointments, getting treated, and then being fine, I found myself in a new domain where I had never known the level of intensity and nerve pain, and I then realised I was dealing with something else. So I was sort of openly chatting to the guys and saying, well, look, I still want to take part in the cycle. And I can remember one of the first meeting we had at Celtic Park with the foundation. I said, look, where I stand just now is that I've got some health issues, hoping in a few weeks' time, August, September time, we'll be back on the bike and then we'll be good for Seville next year. And that was very much the plan. But as we started to get into September and October, the intensity and the frequency of the pain just went off the scales, to the point where I found myself actually in a few occasions, because I was in so much pain and so down, I said to myself, look, I can't even go to Celtic Park and be stuck in that wee seat in the main stand for that length of time. In fact, it was one of the Champions League games that we were at. I actually left at half time because I was just in so much pain and felt so miserable, and decided, right, I'm out of here, get myself down the road type of thing. And then a couple other games after that, I just thought, well, look, I don't feel well enough to go to the game and sit in that wee seat and be miserable and upset other people. So that was really the darkest point, really, September and October. And I think, to put it into perspective, I think we all take our health for granted, Paul, and it's only been yeah, we see lots of stuff on social media. We see things that the foundation's doing, and it's helping people and stuff like that. Until something actually happens to yourself, you just don't know. And without boring people, my priorities changed. So my priorities changed from being, right, we've got the league campaign, we've got the Champions League campaign, right? I'm going to be meeting folk up to go cycling Saturdays and Sundays because I'm going to Seville. That all just had to set second priority, because what actually happened to me was my focus was, can I achieve two things? One, can I actually sleep at night with this pain? Number one. And number two, when I get up, can I sit in the chair long enough to touch the keyboard and to use the mouse and actually perform those activities to support my customer, if you like. And that was my two priorities. And I have to say, there were some days I would be getting to 2:30 in the day where I just really couldn't do anymore, and I had to go and rest and then come back at it later on at night and be working at silly time at night. So my priorities really changed. And I think for my own situation, I'm lucky that I had support of my wife, and I wasn't there myself. I had some support there from my wife, and I was able to go to the physio and get support from the physio. And there were some other people that they probably don't realise that they were doing it, but a couple of the guys who'd went to Lisbon, if you like Alan, for example, and some of the other guys, just getting a little bit of a message now and again saying, how are you getting on WhatsApp? Just lets you know that there's other people out there that, you know, want to make sure that you're okay. But I think what we've got to recognise is not everyone's that lucky. Not everyone's that lucky that they've got people that care for them and stuff. And I think that's where the foundation comes into, Paul, because they do lots of things like that to help people in the community that might not have that sort of support system that I had. But I think all I would say is that having that injury, the muscular pain, and having that nerve situation, that was something I'd never ever experienced before, and it really was pretty dark in September and October time. And unfortunately, being pragmatic about it, I realised that taking part in a cycle at the beginning of May was just highly unlikely to happen, given the amount of training that would be needed for that. So I had to sort of take myself out of the cycle in the October. And then from that, very much just focus on me, focus on sleeping, and focus on sitting at my keyboard and doing my sort of daily job, if you like. And that just became my priority for so long. And sometimes you just need to rest your mind and rest your body, and things sometimes take care of themselves a little bit. And that for me was the whole Seville story in terms of taking part in that cycle. That was sort of very much over. But what I would say is that, again, there was a couple of people there that still contact me and make sure I was okay and stuff like that. And those folk, guys like Alan McLaughlin and other people, did that and kept in touch with me. And I always knew that when the time was right, even if it was going down to Loch Winnock on a Sunday morning on the bike with some of the guys, then that time would come. But the biggest challenge, and it's probably a mental challenge, is you just don't know. You just don't know when you're going to be able to go and do some basic exercise like that again. So that sort of wrote off the Seville thing for me. What then happened is the turn of the year. The turn of the year, I started to feel a little bit better. And physically feeling better, and I was getting that sort of feedback from the physio. And we had we had an event in February in the Admiral Bar, not long before the Admiral Bar closed down. We had an event for the cycle to Seville, and I think just seeing all the folk there that night, and a few of the CQNers that night, just sort of energised myself that, hey, I sort of put the road to Seville at the back of my mind, right? We went along that night with my wife and my sister. We went along, and that just sort of energised and just woke me up again about the Seville. Oh, right, that Seville thing's happening, and yeah, and so that's where I sort of got to with it. I realised that Alan still contacted me. We met up for coffee every couple of weeks, just kept in touch about where we were. And I remember having this conversation, and this was very much at the beginning of April. I says, look, Brian Scott, who's the physio that's been sort of helped me for the last period in time, if you like, has got me doing some cycling. And Alan's saying to me, Paul, that's really good. And I said, what are you doing? And I says, well, we really need to be careful that we don't have relapses and stuff like that. So we're trying to do like 10 minutes on the bike and assess the reaction over the 2-3 days after that. And at that time, even doing 10 minutes, I was really scared about doing that. And I don't mean to over dramatise it. Doing 10 minutes on a bike hunched like this in the areas of your body that have been in pain for months. So that was fine. And I remember saying, look, if I can build this up, I've got a wee idea. And the wee idea is I might do a virtual cycle to Seville. Because during COVID, I had done something similar, which was to cycle to Milan on my bike in the loft, if you like. And I did that over a number of weeks. So that was a crazy idea. Paul, I'd only done a couple of 10-minute sessions and here my brain's running away from itself. So that was fine. But I think, I don't know, sometimes some things happen to you for a reason. And it was the Saturday morning of the semi-final, the Scottish Cup. I woke up and I'm starting to be in pain again, and I've realised that I've had a relapse. And so that was fine. So I had to get the treatment and stuff. And then before we know it, we've won the league on the Sunday at Tynecastle, and then on the Tuesday, I'm at the Tuesday I find myself in the worst I think I've ever been in terms of pain. Being at Brian on the Tuesday morning, getting the treatment, for Brian to say to me, Paul, you need to get onto the phone to your doctor, because in addition to all this sort of back, neck, and arm pain, I was getting chest pains and stuff. And Brian says, Paul, phone the doctor. Right, phones the doctor, and the doctor says you need to come and see me. And at 12:30, at 12:30 in the Tuesday afternoon, the doctor says, I think you're okay, but you're hitting all of my markers. And I said, what's that? She said, you're 50 years old, you live in Glasgow, you're Scottish, and you've got history of heart problems in your family. Thankfully, you don't smoke, but you've hit every one of my markers. You're now getting the VIP treatment. And I said, what does that mean? She says, you need to go to the hospital. So, cutting a long story short, 9.5 hours later, checked out that the heart, chest things were okay, but all the other. So the good thing was getting confirmation that it wasn't a heart issue, that it was a something else issue. Just sort of wakens you up that health's so important. And ideas about cycling in the loft on my bike going to Seville had to be sort of calmed down at that time. So that's very much where we were. In May we really hit the sort of darkest point in terms of the health, in terms of all these things ongoing. But like anything, you just got to trust the process. And at that point in time, I was impatient. I was saying, when am I going to get better and stuff like that? But had to trust the process, had to trust the doctors, had to trust the physio, and eventually, with some help from the physio, the physio guided me to have specific conversations with the doctors, and I got various treatments and x-rays and stuff, and they went and looked at different things. And during June, things started to pick up. So what I would say is positively, since early June, things have picked up. The health is getting better. The physio, Brian Scott, has said, look, Paul, go back and do the 10 minutes. Let me know the outcome. Okay. Repeat that a few times and just do it in a controlled manner. And then I found myself at 15 minutes. And then 2 weekends ago, I found myself jumping from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. And in doing so, that's given me a little bit more confidence, because I was scared when Brian said to me there in July, Paul, try the 10 minutes. I put it off for about 3 weeks. I just made excuses. I just didn't want to go on the bike in case I'll lean forward and it caused a problem. So anyway, 2 things happened. One, Paul, is that the road to Seville cyclist, if you like, had reached about 96k, and it was getting so close to the 100k. Whilst I was not able to take part in the cycle, I had a bit of a distraction through May, June and July, where I was able to pick up the social media and go and annoy everyone on social media and about the cycle, trying to raise money. So I've been doing that for a few weeks, and that was energising me. So whilst a lot of the cyclists were starting to sort of think, well, hold on, Paul, we've been doing this for a year now. We need to get back to work. I was starting to get energised about going and putting all the stuff out on social media for the cycle. So what then came about was we're at 96k, and we're thinking, wouldn't it be great if the cycle to Seville could get to 100k for the foundation? And could you imagine what the foundation could do with 100k? So, for example, that Monday, Thursday night club where people come along and they get a cup of tea or their dinner, something like that, they could probably run that for about 2 years type of thing. So the idea was, let's try and get to 100k, and whatever way possible. There was different ideas flying about, and I sort of stuck my neck out a little bit and said, okay, I think I'll do this virtual cycle. It might take me a few months, it might take me 2 years, but the bottom line is, we want to get the 100k, we want to raise the extra money to get to the 100k, and I need to have some sort of target for me to rehabilitate myself in terms of getting myself back on the bike. And positively, that's over the last sort of 3 weeks, it's got me in a position whereby that I'm at 30 minutes now. This weekend I'll be at 45, and if all things go well, in a few weeks' time I'll start the Road to Seville cycle proper. And that deals with one aspect about me getting a focus, a mental, physical focus to make myself better by doing the cycle. But the most important motivation in the other track is, can we raise the awareness of the foundation and get the foundation on the Road to Seville project over 100k? And sitting here today, we're actually the Road to Seville cycle has raised just over £99,000. So we're within £1,000 of getting to that 100k.
And listen, so proud of you, really am, and everybody who's listening to your story is going to be so proud of you. And you can count the Celtic supporters to more than get you across the six figures. I don't have a shadow of a doubt about that. And you're a glorious example of what I would like to think of when I think of Celtic fans, and an inspiration, as I said, to me and to so many others. And you know, this 135-year-old football club has got heroes in its history, and some of us have a wee page there, or maybe just a wee paragraph there, and you've got one. You know, what you've done, what the explanation you've given for yourself, your inspiration for where it is. And I remember not that long ago, probably 15 years ago, seeing newsreels in 93, 94, seeing a young lad out in the car park when the Celts for Change thing was going on. Just you've been close to this club probably all your adult life, and no doubt a significant part of your childhood life as well. And it's formed not only you as a man and as an adult and as a husband and an employee or whatever. It's formed who we are as a modern football club. You know, we should not take it for granted that we're here, we're solvent, we're competitive on the field, that we have values that are consistent with the foundation and with people doing these things, because without people doing what you do, none of that happens. You know, you're just another football club that was formed one day by a group of guys that wanted to play football and go out and win football games. And you know, we've got a history, and we've got a present day history that's very much dependent on people like you picking up the effort and making it all happen. We're going to leave the links to your fundraising to get you over the edge. I know you need to go now, and you need to say your farewells, but can I just say thank you very much for everything you've done for reputation of football fans generally, for Celtic fans in particular, and for the community that you know you're a very big part of. You shouldn't do this if it's risking your health. You know, we'll get you the money.
Absolutely.
Don't do it if in any way you're not feeling right about it. You need to back off. This is not about.
No, definitely. It'll be done, as I said earlier on. It'll be done in the pain that last October and the pain in May is just, I've never experienced that before. So this time round, it'll be very controlled. I'm doing the rehab stuff work just now, where get myself on the 30 minutes, report back to Brian the end of this week. Okay, if I've not had any reactions, we'll go to 45. We'll build that up, we'll build the frequency up. And then when the time's right, and that might be a couple of weeks' time, during September, we'll start the cycle to Seville, right? And we'll give everybody the updates. And when I'm fit to be able to do it, I'll do it. If I have any setbacks, we're not giving up. It just might be paused for a couple of days or a couple of weeks. But if it takes us 2 months or 2 years to go to Seville on the bike, we're going to do that. And we're going to do it in a controlled manner, right? And we're going to keep the topic about raising the money for the foundation alive, right? Because it's why the club was formed, and even to this day, it's still at the heart of what the football club's about, right? You put the news on the evening, you see all these ridiculous transfer fees and stuff like that for players I've never even heard of, going to England and going to Saudi Arabia and all these other places and stuff like that. You know, I look back and I look at it and I think, well, our football club's not about that. Our football club's about helping people in the community, and whether that's the community in Glasgow, the community in London, or in Africa, or wherever, that's what it's about. And yeah, and we'll keep going. But yeah, I agree. We'll do it in a controlled manner, because obviously we need to look after my health, right? Because we need to have some sustainability here, because I want to see Celtic winning more trophies in the future as well. I don't want to be stuck at home not being able to go to Celtic Park in a Champions League night.
Well, listen, Paul, thank you very much for coming on and explaining your story and your objectives here. Take care of yourself, keep us updated socially, and come back on to CQN and let us know how you go. And the very best of luck with it.
Okay, thank you very much.